I'm the type of person that calls a spade a spade. I call things like I see them. I don't use my emotion when I am trying to be objective. Right now, what we see from Tennessee fans on Twitter, Facebook, message boards, and other means of communication, talk radio, things like that, is two extreme sides that are steering the conversation. Just like in politics, the extreme left and the extreme right are not the majority of people, yet they are the loudest. People like me who are in the middle, we don't tend to really post a lot. Same thing with sports. On the one side of the spectrum, you have people who think Rick Barnes should be fired. On the other side of the spectrum, you have people that carry water for him, that think he can do no wrong, that thinks he deserves every penny he makes. But if you look into the facts, you will most likely come to the conclusion of logic. Logically speaking, Rick Barnes does deserve criticism for the product he's put on the floor. But firing Rick Barnes, if you follow that to its logical conclusion, would set the Tennessee basketball program back for years to come. Let's go over the criticisms I have of Rick Barnes. And let me preface, I don't think he should be fired. I think that would be idiotic. It would be similar to firing Fulmer. Yeah, Fulmer did struggle a little bit. He had a couple down seasons. In between those two seasons, he made the SEC title game. But look how terrible Tennessee football's been. It still hasn't fully recovered since you fired Fulmer. Just because a coach who consistently wins has a couple down years doesn't mean it's time to kick him to the curb. But you still have to critique them if you're going to be objective. My number one gripe is production. John Calipari, love him or hate him, is a great coach. He has the most NBA draft picks over the past 10 years, first round picks. He has the most Elite Eight appearances. He has a national championship. And he's won the most games in March over the past couple of years. He makes $8 million. Second is Mike Krzyzewski, one of the all-time great coaches. 5 national championships. Anybody that even remotely follows college basketball knows how great Duke has been under Mike Krzyzewski. He makes $7 million. Number 3 is Jay Wright. Jay Wright has made 3 Final Fours, 3 national championship games, and has 2 rings. $6 million. Number 4 is Chris Beard at $5 million. Chris Beard has as many Final Fours as Rick Barnes and took Texas Tech all the way to the national championship game against Virginia. Right under Chris Beard, who makes $5 million, you have Rick Barnes, who makes $495 million, right at $5 million a year. Now, these are base salaries, meaning that is the lowest they can possibly make. But if you win the SEC, if you win the SEC tournament, if you make the Final Four, if you make certain things, you can make more money. Base salary is just the very lowest you can make. But based upon the production of these other coaches, I don't think Rick Barnes is on the same level, especially the past 3 seasons. 3 years ago, the season shut down due to COVID. But even if the season were to play out as scheduled, Tennessee wouldn't have made the field of 68. They would have played in the NIT. In fact, I think they would have lost to Alabama in the first round of the SEC championship. Not championship, but the first round of the SEC tournament. I'm thinking about the game tomorrow. The next season, you have mediocrity. Tennessee, despite having 3 NBA players, E. Pons, Jaden Springer, Keon Johnson, you get the absolute hell beaten out of you by Oregon State. Totally unacceptable. And you finish fourth in the SEC. Yet Rick Barnes is the fifth highest paid coach. The worst thing over the past couple years is the offense. It seems like ever since Grant, Admiral, Bone, and Lamonte Turner have left, Tennessee has not been able to throw a pebble into the ocean. Here's the stats for this year alone. Tennessee attempts 28.3 three-pointers per game, which is 23rd in the entire country. They only make 32%, right at 33%. Sorry, my handwriting's a little bad, but you get the point. Which is 253rd in the country. If you were to shoot 10 shots, that's 2.5 out of 10. Essentially, you can't win games shooting 2 out of 10. Out of their roster, the only player who attempts more than 5 a game and hits a good percentage is Vescovi. Vescovi attempts 7.9 threes a game, and he makes 36%. I have no problem with Vescovi shooting threes. In fact, in the Ole Miss game, he is the reason Tennessee won. Some of those timely three-pointers he was able to make. What is really perplexing to me is Justin Powell. He shot 40% at Auburn last year and averaged 11 points a game. Yet this season, he's only attempting 3.2. He's making 39%, but why isn't he shooting more? Even Rick Barnes has pointed that out, that Powell needs to shoot more. But in order to shoot more, you need more minutes. Powell isn't a bad defender. I mean, he's not on the same level as Triple J or Bone, but he is definitely a good defender. He doesn't get completely destroyed out there. I don't understand why you don't run sets for Powell and give him more minutes. The biggest perplexing thing is Victor Bailey. At the very least, last year, he could hit threes. He's only shooting 21% this year. He's been absolute abysmal, which is really weird. Now, let me preface, I love Triple J. He's one of my favorites on the team. But he needs to stop shooting threes. He's shooting 5.6 per game, only making 22%. Why do you have Triple J shooting more threes than Justin Powell? Don't get me wrong, Triple J does good stuff on the floor, even when his shot isn't falling. He makes good rebounds. He averages 6 rebounds a game. He can pass the ball. He can handle the ball. But at the same time, why is he out there shooting threes? It makes no sense. If you were to fire Rick Barnes, all that being said, let's say you fire Rick Barnes. Let's follow this to its logical conclusion. If terminated before April 30th, 2024, the university would owe him his entire remaining salary. Essentially, you would owe around $20 million. So you would pay his buyout, and then who would you hire? What coach who has a better winning percentage that you could pay less money do you think would come to Tennessee? People say Rick Pitino, he's almost 80 years old. Not to mention, when Tennessee's under investigation, the worst thing you can do is bring in a coach who had his program under the death penalty. Who's a realistic coach with a better winning percentage that you think could do better than Rick Barnes, that would make less money than Rick Barnes? I can't think of anybody. It's all about alternatives. If you could tell me you could get John Calipari or Jay Wright or Chris Beard, I would be all for it. But realistically, none of those coaches are going to leave their university, and even if they did, you wouldn't be able to afford them with the buyout. Rick Barnes is 133-77, which means he wins 63% of his games. For his career, he averages 65%. What other coach would come to UT that would win that amount of games? Not to mention, you would have to let him rebuild. It took Rick Barnes 2 years to rebuild, and Rick Barnes is a really good coach. The next coach you brought in, there would be a lot of transfers, especially at this portal. You would lose Chandler, Fulkerson's going to be gone, Kamwa, you would lose Powell, you would lose the entire roster. Not to mention, you got BJ Edwards coming next year, who's a 4-star recruit. You essentially would nuke your own program. Owe $20 million around. And be out of the tournament for at least 2 years at best. But there are solutions. The first one is you need better NIL money. Tennessee had a great recruiting class before NIL. They were caught flat-footed. Now they're only 74th in the nation. Texas A&M literally bought the best recruiting class in football history. Here's what they did, though. They made them sign contracts. The second they leave A&M in the transfer portal, they lose their money. That's what you do. Tennessee needs a good NIL program to get 5-star recruits. Number 2, stop shooting damn threes. You're only making 32%. 2 out of 10, 2.5 out of 10. 253rd in the nation. On the other hand, you're making 52%, which would mean you're making around 5 out of 10. Kennedy Chandler has shown in certain games like Colorado in the first half of the LSU game, if you let him drive, that's his game. He's not a natural shooter. The third thing is you need to develop some of the younger players. Barnes has shown with PJ Tucker, with Grant Williams, with Schofield, and even Plastich, he can develop players. You need to develop Huntley Hatfield. You need to develop Ziegler. He's going to be a nice player. You need to develop those players. Doing these things, getting better NIL deals, like Texas A&M did, shooting more 2-pointers instead of shooting 3s, and developing younger talent, which Barnes can do. That's his specialty, is taking players nobody wants that are 1 and 2 stars and making them NBA players. He did the same thing with PJ Tucker that he's done with Grant Williams. It would be far cheaper economically. You wouldn't have to wait 2 years at best to make the tournament, and it wouldn't cost you $20 million. I say Rick Barnes is not immune from criticism. He's underperformed. He's overpaid based on his production. This season is borderline unwatchable, but I believe in Rick Barnes. He has shown over his career, whether he was at Providence, whether he was at Clemson, whether he was at Texas or even Tennessee, that he consistently can win you 65% of your games and get you into the tournament every year. I would rather make the tournament every season, or let's be fair, let's say 3 out of every 4 years make the tournament, and on occasion make the Sweet 16 and maybe one Elite 8, then have to wait 2 more years rebuilding the program. That's just me, though. So, to the people who say fire Rick Barnes, who would you get to replace him? How would you pay his buyout? And how many years would it take to get you back to March? And for all of those who want to carry water for him, explain to me why Tennessee keeps jacking up threes. Why Triple J shoots almost 4 more threes per game than Powell. And he makes 22% while Powell makes 39%. Explain those things to me again. I think this is fixable. There are certain things you can do that will make the team better, that will improve the recruiting, that will help develop the players. Hell, this season you can shoot more 2-pointers. Other than Vescovy and Powell, I don't really think anybody should have the green light to shoot. Maybe Kamwa. Surprisingly, he's averaging 50%, but he only attempts one per game. Other than Kamwa, who would have to be wide open, other than Vescovy, other than Powell, I don't see why you're letting Triple J shoot threes. I don't see why you're letting Chandler shoot threes. You're wasting his talent. He should be driving to the lane. Go Vols. Hopefully they can beat South Carolina to begin the season 500 in the SEC. Then they have a tough game ahead at Rupp Arena on Saturday.